This video looks at S2 biology microbes. So we're going to have a little look at useful microbes in this section. Your learning objective will be to learn how microbes can be used to benefit humanity. So we'll give you 3 minutes just at the start. Think of how many different beneficial uses of microbes you can think of. And then any that I have on the next slide, you can tick off with your partner. I'll give you 5 minutes. Pause the video and then come back in 3 to 5 minutes when you've got a decent list. Okay, let's have a look and see what my list looks like. So the first one I thought of was making antibiotics. We've already talked about the fact that antibiotics are really, really useful in getting rid of bacterial infections. You don't want to take them if you have a viral illness, but they're really, really good for bacterial infections. Keeping your gut healthy. So some of you may have thought of this one. So your gut is really, really good at digesting food, and it's really, really good at stopping nasty pathogens, bad bacteria living in your gut. One of the ways it does that is it has bacteria already living there. It's really, really difficult for new bacteria to live there because the old gut bacteria stops the bad bacteria getting to live there. Developing immunity. So there's a lot of evidence now that if you come in contact with lots of bacteria when you're quite young, then you develop good immunities against it, and it helps you out a little bit with your immune system when you come across worse ones in future life. Reducing allergies. So again, if you give your immune system something to fight that's easy and that's reasonable, it doesn't go looking for silly things to attack. It's a slightly simplified view of how bacteria help to reduce allergies, but there is really, really good evidence that they do. Decomposition is what we'll talk about today. That's one of the major uses of bacteria on the planet. And making food, again, it's a big thing we talk about in this course. So any other ones you got, I'm sure were very, very good. These are the main ones. So decomposition. We're going to look at how microbes can be used to decompose. So there's a video here we're going to have a look at. Oh yeah, that's why. There's a video here we're going to look at. There's, funnily enough, not a video you can watch. If you look at a moldy bread time lapse, so we can see. Okay, it doesn't want us to watch that either. We can see bread rotting in real time. Another thing you can do is if you Google supersize me experiment, if you Google supersize me burger experiment, you can watch a 5 to 10 minute video that shows decomposition really, really well. You can see over time the mold moving down. See my slightly poor internet connection. See what it looks like near the end. You can see that it looks really, really disgusting near the end. There's lots of bacteria that have grown on this, and it's not doing so well. Doesn't seem to work very well. Sure, that's what it said. But I said, yeah, if you get your teacher who's covering you to Google the supersize me burger experiment, it's a really, really good one using mason jars where it can show you the burger decomposing. So decomposition. Again, if you take a few minutes as a pair, what do we mean by decomposition? So the teacher will pause the video and you'll have a chance to think, what do you mean by decomposition? Okay, if you've had a wee think about that. So the sciencey way to think of it is the state of rotting or decay. So can you think of any other words for decomposition? Again, you can shout them out at your cover teacher, or they can pause the video if they want you to think about it. Okay, so you may have thought of some of these. The state of rotting or decay. We have decay, rotting, going bad, putrefaction, putrescence, futility, festering, spoilage, perishing, corruption. We've got things like separation, division, breaking down, breaking up, dissolution, resolution, analysis, reduction. Lots of great words. Crumbling, dissolving, things like breaking apart. So decomposition is a great word. Again, sorry, I'm off the book as well. How fast do you think these things will decompose? So what you could do is try and work out which ones of these do you think would decompose within a minute, a day, a week, a month, a year, or do you think will never decompose? And see if you can link any of this to our current climate and environmental issues. So again, the teacher will pause the video and you'll have a chance to talk. Okay, so things that are organic, so come from a living organism, like your banana, your rabbit, if that was a real Christmas tree, that would count. Paper towels, paper, these are from living creatures and they've not been very, very processed. So they still contain most of the same molecules as when they were alive. So bacteria are able to easily break these down. A big thing about decomposition is it's microbes, which is why we're talking about it, that do this process. So organic molecules that are alive or close to living are really easy to break down. Things like Haribo are quite sugary, so bacteria don't really like that, but eventually would break down. Things like the Coke inside a Coke can would eventually semi-break down, the crisps inside the packet. The plastics and metals, plastics don't really decompose very well at all. There's really interesting research trying to find bacteria that can eat plastics, because obviously if we could do that, it would aid us a lot in getting rid of them instead of having to put into landfill. And metals, obviously, we have corrosion, which is possibly one of the words we had here. Maybe not. It's a good word. Corrosion. So if you react them with water and oxygen, they get all rusty. So it's like decomposition, but not quite. So make a note on page 14 of 3 of the materials you think are most likely to decompose and 3 that are least likely. So again, pause the video and have a look at that. Okay. So the sorts of things that decompose are natural things that are either alive or have been alive quite recently. Any organic, natural material will decompose eventually, but obviously some are faster than others. A chemist has a different understanding of what organic means to a biologist. The more processed the food is, so the more things that have been done to it, the longer it will take to decompose. And man-made materials usually take hundreds, sometimes thousands of years to decompose. So food for thought, this is fruit, day 1, day 80, and as I said, you can watch the Supersize Me video. It will show you what burgers look like after months. And there's the link here. So I've included the PowerPoint with this video for your teacher, and they can show you that cool video. So decomposition is really, really important. We know a little bit about our food chain from S1. So remember, the arrows in your food chain show where the energy is moving and the direction it moves through the ecosystem. It's a one-way process, or is it? If it was, we'd have no energy left at the end. So energy from recycled things needs to be recycled. Living things, energy needs to be recycled. But how does it get back to the start? So after the bunny rabbit dies, or is eaten by the owl's poo, the dead grass, the dead owl, the dead rabbit, these all rot down through bacterial decomposition and go back into the soil where they're picked up by plants and the cycle continues again. Why does it happen? Living tissue is broken down constantly into simpler stuff. Process is part of the nutrient cycle and is really important for recycling what is actually a finite number of molecules on the earth. So it's not an unlimited number. Bodies of living things start to decompose shortly after death. So death, waste and decay is all broken down by decomposers. This is not a good picture of decomposers. You're looking at fungi, bacteria, you're not looking at these insects really. And then that's absorbed back. So it's bacteria and fungi that feed on the dead organisms. We call them decomposers because of this. And they recycle all the useful stuff back into the soil. So what would happen to this bread? So again, all bread decomposes. If you look at that Supersize Me video, it will show you bread doesn't always decompose if you fill it with sugar or other preservatives like salt. So think about it. Which of these situations would the bread go the moldiest fastest? Again, your teacher may pause the video and have you discuss this. So you could do an experiment to show this. What you would find is that moist and warm conditions are the best for decomposition. So warmth, moist, and oxygen doesn't need light. You can have things rot in a dark box, but as long as it's warm and moist and there's oxygen, it'll be fine. Think about why this might be. Okay. So you're going to need to copy this down. So for warmth, high temperatures, so really, really hot temperatures like an oven, will stop decomposition by killing the bacteria. Low temperatures slow it down. So the high temperatures kill the materials by destroying chemicals, and low temperatures stop the bacteria reacting and dividing. Lack of water will slow down or prevent decomposition, as microbes can't reproduce as well in these dry conditions. And lack of oxygen kills the microbe basically. This is the Tolland man. So he was found buried in a peat bog high in the mountains of Denmark. It was only later found that he was 2,000 years old. Peat is very high in peat is very moist. Why do you think he therefore did not decompose? It's because it's a very acidic environment and bacteria don't really like acidic conditions, so he's still quite well preserved. The conditions in this box, however, you can't really see, but he's in a sealed box, must be very low oxygen, low moisture, and reasonably low temperature. But we don't always want decay to happen. So how do we stop it? Again, you can discuss lots of discussion today. Discuss with your partner and try and think of how we at home stop decomposition happening. So what did you get for warmth? Again, page 15. Write this down. So put things in the fridge or the freezer more effectively. Moisture. So foods could be freeze dried. Oxygenation. Foods can be vacuum sealed. So what would the world be like if decomposition didn't happen? Have we think? Plastics are obviously a very good example of this. The sea is absolutely full of plastic, so it's very difficult for it to decompose. If that was the case with living organisms, trees would be piled high. Interestingly, it was a few billion years between trees evolving before there was a bacteria that was able to decompose them properly. So trees were piled hundreds of meters high in some area because there was nothing that could properly break them down. It's very interesting. That's where a lot of our fossil fuels actually come from. That period of time where things were just getting layered big on top of each other before they were able to be properly decomposed. So I want everyone to have a wee go at these questions in their jotter, and then the answers will come up on the board. So organic materials decay the fastest. We need materials to decompose to continue the cycle. The microbes involved in decomposition of bacteria and fungi. The ideal conditions are warm, moist, with lots of oxygen. And we can slow down the process using freeze drying, heating foods up, storing in fridge and freezers, or vacuum sealing. Just if there's any time left, we've looked a little bit at yeast in the previous cover lesson, and the yeast being a single-celled fungus, which helps to make lots of products we use in everyday life. It feeds on sugar and produces carbon dioxide when it does. If you look at grapes, you see this grey stuff, that is yeast. So it's added to flour to make the dough rise. It feeds on the sugar in the dough mix and gives out carbon dioxide. This is the gas that makes the dough rise. So you fill in these blanks. Have a think first what you think might be. and then the answers. So the sugar it feeds on is carbon dioxide. It's glucose, but it feeds on sugar. It makes the gas carbon dioxide, and that makes the bubbles that cause the dough to rise. Baking the dough then kills the yeast and stops it doing this anymore. Yeast is important also, not just in bread making, but in brewing. So there's a beer information sheet that will be attached, and you can answer those questions in your jotter. Okay. So to make beer, you need barley, hops, water, and yeast. There's 1,200 different types of beer in Britain, and it makes alcohol from the sugar. Beer is fizzy because of carbon dioxide. The ale yeast grows at 12 to 18 degrees C. 3 weeks is how long the yeasts are growing for, and the temperature is about 12 degrees. Okay. Finally, on page 16, yeast feeds on sugar in barley to make beer. The yeast produces ethanol. Hops is added to beer to give it flavour. Okay, hopefully you found that lesson reasonably interesting. We covered quite a lot of stuff, and I think 16 minutes should probably be enough with the several wait times for that to fill the 40-minute lesson.